what does this mean? What's his next step? Do you think he's going to take that next step?
Well, you guys sound like you have you had enough of this Brady case.
I think everybody has.
Not me. Come on.
More appearances.
Yeah. What can I tell you? This is, it was bad for Brady, good for me.
There you go.
Yeah. So look, here's in a nutshell. Here's the answer to your question. I think, in my opinion, I think that this thing is done. Does he have some avenues to go forward? Yeah. He could go back to the Second Circuit and ask them to hear his case, what's called en banc, and that means instead of a 3-judge panel, which he had, which decided this case, he would go back and get a panel, I think, of 10 or 11 judges, something like that, and ask them to review it. This is a 2-to-1 decision. There was a dissenting judge in this case, so this is the kind of thing that perhaps the Second Circuit en banc may want to take a look at. In my opinion, they're not going to, and I think there is no chance that the Supreme Court is going to take this. So effectively, in my opinion, I think this case is done.
Yeah, because it just seems like a series of Hail Marys, right? Because it's not about his innocence or guilt. It's about whether Roger Goodell in some way violated a CBA that was negotiated. And you've been saying for the longest time that usually when you get to courts, they're going to honor the contract.
Well, that's what this opinion is all about. It's a very interesting opinion. What the opinion basically says is, look, we don't know if Brady deflated the ball. We don't know what the facts are. We don't know, but we do know that in arbitration law, great deference is paid to the decision of the arbitrator for many, many reasons. One of the things is in America, we wish to encourage arbitration. So we don't want any of this sort of 20/20 hindsight going back. And in this case, they pointed out, they said, look, this perhaps isn't the fairest way to do this. And I have always said that it wasn't a particularly fair hearing. When you have Goodell, who's both the judge and the appealing judge and the guy who gives the sentence, it doesn't smell right and it doesn't sound right. But the National Football Players Association, the NFL, the Players Association, they entered into a collective bargaining agreement, and you give and take in a collective bargaining agreement. And they agreed to this kind of procedure. And, guys, if you think about it, you can see why. I mean, what are the grand things that they're worried about? Pensions and health care and things like that. Discipline, what does it affect? 7, 8 members of the union a year? So when it came time to give a little, they gave a little. And they gave this power to Goodell, and he never said he was going to use it fairly. And, he made a decision, and the courts are such that they say, arbitrators make decisions, and we uphold them.
It would almost be, Roger, like if he appealed to the same circuit court and the same 3 judges and expected the outcome to be different. I mean, it's ridiculous. They gave Goodell all this power, and now they're shouting that it's not fair. I'm sorry, you gave him the power.
Look, the real surprise in this case, from my viewpoint as a guy who's supposed to, who is a legal analyst, and didn't have a dog in the race or in the fight over Brady, not Brady, just as a guy who looked at the case and said, well, how should this turn out from what I know? The shock in this case was Berman's decision. Not the Second Circuit's decision. It was Berman's decision that when he upheld, when he disallowed Goodell's decision and upheld Brady, that was the one that we all felt, or many of us felt, was shocking. And if it would have been allowed to stand, I have always said it would turn arbitration law on its head, because like it or not, this is the way arbitration reviews are set up, so that unless you can find that the arbitrator was taking somebody's money and stick it in this pocket, you are going to uphold the arbitrator's decision. That's just the way it is. And as they say in the opinion, it's not for us to decide, whether he did it, whether he didn't do it, what happened. They agreed to this, and that's what they got to live by. And that's what the decision's all about.
Now, could taking it to the next step, knowing you're not going to win, but is there a process that could actually get him to still play the first 4 games this season?
Yeah, if the Second Circuit decides to grant a hearing, what's en banc is what I said, what I told you guys, and they reverse this opinion, then then the only thing would be left for the other side to appeal to the Supreme Court. I don't see that happening, but I must say this. I think that if the Second Circuit overturned this opinion and found in favor of Goodell, I would say that the NFL would have a greater chance of getting to the Supreme Court than the players, because it would have such an impact on the way arbitration law is thought of in this country. It's just the way it is. I never said this was what I thought was a fair hearing. You know, it didn't smell right, the idea of Goodell being the guy who decides it, then he's the guy who decides the appeal, and then he's the guy that decides. I mean, you know, it doesn't meet any of the traditional notions that we have of fairness. But when two parties agree to something,
there you go.
They got to live by it, and that's what the Second Circuit held today. They didn't make any notion about, or they didn't make any decision regarding, you know, whether Brady did or didn't do it. He said, but they did say, look, arbitration law is that we give great deference to the decision of the arbitrator, well, and that's what happened.
And before we let you go, then the dissenting judge, Judge right. Robert Katzman.
A good judge, you know, a very well-respected judge.
All right, he writes, I'm troubled by the commissioner's decision to uphold the unprecedented 4-game suspension. The commissioner failed to even consider a highly relevant alternative penalty. That was not his place, I think, to write that. His place, does Goodell have that power? Whether he used it unfairly or not, does he have that power? Of course he does. How's that a dissenting opinion?
You know what I think happens? I'm telling you, I think what happened to Berman and Judge Berman and Judge Katz, I think that they are so appalled by the one-sidedness, if you will,
right.
of this procedure, that it just sticks in their craw. And you can certainly see why. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the guy you're negotiating with the enemy. And when the enemy sticks it to you, you shouldn't be surprised because you gave the enemy that power to do it. And I've had the opportunity to speak with the D. Smith, the head of the Players Association, and hear his opinion on it. And, he's terrific. But, at the end of the day, they faced this, what I thought was an insurmountable hurdle, which is arbitration law in America, which says, that short of, you can just pin something on the arbitrator, his decisions are going to be upheld. There was a case I kept citing when I was doing this, on air, and I kept citing it was called the Garvey case. You guys remember Steve Garvey? He used to play football. And the Garvey case was almost not quite the same, but it really came down and was a lot of, it said, arbitration, the arbitrator's going to be upheld short of, like I say, you find the guy on the take or something, and it just went through, and in this opinion, they cited the Garvey case time and time again as precedent for what's going to happen here. And I was surprised when Judge Berman made his decision. I wasn't surprised when the Second Circuit reversed it. And I think, to answer your question again, I think what happens to certain judges, they look at it and they think this is just so unfair that it's just not right. And I'm not disagreeing with that. I agree it's unfair. It was a collective bargaining agreement, and they gave them the power.
Roger, great stuff. Thanks for joining us. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, Roger.
All right. My pleasure, guys.